We're back to considering this item. I think we're going to wait to get back to the Councilmember Tovo's issue. We're going to wait till someone has wording available. Should we go ahead and consider the next amendment while we're waiting for that? Let's go ahead and do that. So we've gotten through pools. Councilmember Tova is working on that language. Councilmember Kitchen, you want to bring up yours? Okay.
I'm withdrawing my amendment, and I think there'll be another solution, hopefully.
Sounds good. Councilmember Kitchen, you want to bring up your amendments?
Sure. The first one I'll bring up will be the direction, and that is it's in response to the testimony we had recently from Jennifer McPhail with ADAP, and it's direction. It's not a language in the ordinance. And what it says is direct the city manager and the Housing, Transportation, and Development Services staff to work with the disability community, including the Austin office of ADAP of Texas, to discuss and develop recommendations addressing issues related to the parking availability provisions of Part 5, and to return to council with such findings and recommendations at the June 20th council meeting. What this boils down to is it relates to really what we're saying in here is that we are allowing the flexibility to not have the parking minimums, and we're providing for having accessible spaces. So the concern that was raised just had to do with enforceability about the use of accessible spaces by folks that, the inappropriate use of accessible spaces. And so I think it's worth a conversation. This is an organization that is raising a concern for us. It's worth a conversation with them. We're already going to be considering how we go forward with enforceability. So this simply just puts some structure around that and makes it clear that we're going to have that conversation and return to the council with the results of the conversation. So that's what this direction's about. So I wanted to move passage of this direction.
Is there any objection to this direction? Hearing none, this direction's added. Do you have anything else, Ann?
Yes, I passed out one, and I apologize I didn't number these, but this one is a new Part 6. And this goes to conversations we've had about the enforcement process and penalties. So it's a new Part 6 under the section that says post-construction requirements and penalty. It's designed to track the way that this ordinance has been set up. So it's aligned with the way that we proceed with enforcement. And that is, it says the city shall enter into an agreement, and we've already said in other places in this ordinance that there will be an agreement. So it says the city shall enter into an agreement with each qualifying development. So it tracks that purpose of doing an agreement. And then it sets out, it clarifies, the purpose, one of the purposes of the agreement is to ensure compliance with affordability. And then it sets out provisions to include in that agreement. So the first one is for owner-occupied housing, granting the city a right of first refusal for purchase of the property upon sale. The second one we talked about earlier, and Councilmember Kassar, I appreciate the questions you asked because it helped me understand the complexities around that. And I had put the language to the extent feasible. I'm certainly willing to make that clearer if it's not clear. My point with that was simply for it to be considered. I understand that it may not be possible or advisable because of the complexities that were discussed, and it also may not be something that could even be done in the near term. But it's there to be considered. The third is provisions related to penalties for repeated violations, and the reason I put that there is because what we have in the ordinance is language about penalties, but we don't have language about, well, what do we do with someone who, or an entity that repeatedly violates. So this is just says that the staff should figure out what those provisions are and put that in there. And the last one is just open-ended to allow for other provisions that the city may deem appropriate.
Mayor, I have no objection to any part of Part 6, except I'd like discussion and a potential vote on number 2. So
Okay, is there any objection to adding points, the beginning paragraph and points 1, 3, and 4? No objection to those? Then those are included. Let's now discuss number 2. Councilmember Kassar.
Mayor, I'd like Yves to come up because he worked on this with the Housing Coalition a decent bit. All right, you're here talking on behalf of the broader group, is that right?
Yes, on behalf of the Austin Housing Coalition, I serve on the Executive Committee and the Advocacy Committee of Housing Works Austin.
So we worked diligently with a variety of different kinds of housing providers who provide permanent supportive housing, housing for folks with disabilities, rental housing, big, small, and I just never had a chance to talk to them about whether or not right of first refusal works for all of them. Did y'all discuss right of first refusal and whether that works for everybody during your process?
Frankly, this was one of the things that we did not get to discuss beyond today when it came up. So some of the members who were here, we just had a brief sort of just chat on it, but that was not a conversation that we've been able to have among all the housing advocates, including the Housing Coalition. And I would just, reflecting on what Jennifer Hicks had said, I think this is aspirational, and I think it's a goal that we all need to be focusing on. Yes, it's something that we can think of as a good policy, but frankly, at this moment, it's just hard to assess what the impact could be. As Jennifer said, some of it is covered in the low-income housing tax credit. We might have some other provisions elsewhere. It's hard to assess without talking to folks.
And so, Mayor, for now, my preference would be to not include this, understanding that I think we have an ongoing process with the housing community about our bond projects, about our overall requirements, and if we wind up having right of first refusal included, then we should include it here, and we can include it everywhere. But I just don't want to include it here, not having even had the conversation and knowing what the problems could be. And I recognize it has the words "to the extent feasible," but my understanding is that it's generally always legally feasible for us to write it in, and I just don't know in every situation whether that ends up making something not work. And so that's why I just would rather not include number 2, because to me it seems like creating a new requirement specifically for this program that wasn't discussed with that broad table of people providing housing.
You added the instruction on the last one asking staff to come back in June for an issue that we didn't know. Should we add this to the things they come back in June and talk to us about?
Well, we could. Let me ask you if you think that that would be something that the housing community would be interested in having a conversation about?
I think that's definitely something we can have a conversation about.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I can just add one other thing. It is to say we hope that the changes then would not be pertaining to one ordinance or one program, but really would then be applied or address
that makes
our
sense.
multiple housing programs as an aspirational goal.
That makes sense. So we could take it out of this one and add it to direction.
Any objection to that happening? The number 2 is included, but in the direction section as opposed to this section. Okay, thank you.
Meaning that it's not in the ordinance.
Right.
It is instead added to the direction to staff of what to bring
To
back.
come back in June and talk to
Direction
us
A.
about it.
Yeah, but just for the clerk, that number 2
Yes.
is not in the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Councilmember Kitchen?
Oh, I do have another one that my staff is working on. We noticed, and I apologize, we just noticed this, so.
Is it ready yet to be handed out? Should I go to somebody else? Or
Go
you
to
just
somebody
have-
else.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Tovo, do you have some?
I'll take up number 3 first. I referenced it earlier. This is to provide additional direction to staff. I think there is language in there about coming back and providing information, but this is all a new passage. Just asking staff to come back a year from adoption of this ordinance with the following information: the applicants who have utilized it, the location of the projects, the number of affordable units and the total units created in each, the number of households, residents housed, at what levels of affordability, and the bedroom mix for both the affordable and the market rate units in each project. So that'll allow us to kind of assess who is using it, where they're using it.
Any objection to
Et cetera.
including this direction? Hearing none, this direction is included. Anything else, Councilmember Tovo?
Yes.
I had related direction.
Sorry, go ahead.
I had some related direction that was related to that.
Is this something you've handed out?
I haven't handed out, and I've got to find it again, but I will find it and come back. I just wanted to flag
Okay.
that.
Councilmember Tovo, do you have something else?
Yes, motion sheet number 1 adds the language, adds the language that, to 20190509council, that in multifamily development projects, the dwelling units would not be used for short-term rental use. In line, and we had a conversation about that on Tuesday.
Any objection to this language being included? Okay. Is there a second to this amendment?
Actually, I do have an objection to the language, but
And
I was.
I objected too.
We have 4 or 5 people object. Councilmember Poole seconds this. You want to discuss it first?
I do. This ordinance is designed to maximize our affordable housing dollars, to maximize affordable housing units, and I do think it's appropriate, given the kinds of provisions that we are waiving to make possible the construction of units, affordable and otherwise, that these not be used as hotel rooms in what should otherwise be used as housing. And again, it's not impacting. We had a discussion on Tuesday about, not wanting to restrict type 1. I'm in complete agreement. This doesn't prevent a property owner from renting out their property as a type 1, but it would prevent those multifamily units from becoming short-term rental units, which I think, again, is appropriate and responsive to what I understand to be the mission of maximizing affordable housing units.
Councilmember Kassar, and then Councilmember Flanagan.
So the reason that I'm just going to vote no on this one is because in a multifamily development, only 25% can be rented out short-term. Those would not be the affordable units. I don't know of any development that does this, but potentially someone could say, I'm going to rent 75% of my units out to low-income people, and 25% would be short-term rentals. That would be complying with the law, and if that 25% helped pay for making sure low-income people have a place to live, I have no problem with that. However, since I don't know of anybody doing that, I don't think this is that big of a deal one way or the other, but in the end, to me, the short-term rental units are obviously not affordable. And so they would still have to be providing low-income housing, and this would be banning an affordable housing developer from potentially utilizing a program that, frankly, every market rate developer out there currently can use. So that's ultimately why I'm voting no, because I think right now, if you are a for-profit market rate corporation, you're allowed to do short-term rental units, but this would be banning an affordable housing developer from having some of their other units be that.
Councilmember Flanagan.
Yeah, I have a similar thought on that, but more just to put a fine point to it. Do we allow STRs of any kind in income-restricted units? Does the agreement you signed to get into an restricted unit allow you to do an STR now?
Lauren Avioli, Neighborhood Housing and Community Development. For our funded projects through the Rental Housing Development Assistance Program, we do place restrictions on the affordable units that we are funding, and we have requirements for leases that basically preclude you from doing short-term rentals in those affordable units.
Yeah, so I'm convinced that the affordable units should not have STRs. It sounds like we pretty much take care of that, and maybe it could be strengthened in some way. But if you're paying for a market rate unit, you shouldn't be precluded from the same regulations that apply to all market rate units.
Councilmember Kitchen.
I think that allowing STRs in a multifamily development in this kind of program is inconsistent with the priorities we just talked about last week under the Land Development Code. We talked about the importance. We went so far as to say we wanted more missing middle and more multifamily. We went really far, which was a good thing, in terms of talking about how much more units we needed in our community. So to say now that, particularly under this program, to say now that a market rate unit can just, and remember, we're talking type 3. We are not talking about STRs where the owner rents out their property. We are talking about a development essentially using units like a hotel. Why in the world would we want to do that when we just I just don't understand that, particularly for this program, when we set, and it really just doesn't matter to me that everyone else can do that right now. That didn't stop us from making the changes we did last week on the land development code. What we said was that we need to make changes in our community. We've got 135,000 times 3 units that we need to meet. We want more missing middle. We want more, and we want them in the places that this is going to be. And one of the things that this program does is it talks about the importance of I think it's a half mile or a quarter mile from corridors. Why aren't we protecting that for people to have places to live? So it makes no sense to me not to include this kind of ban, and I want to thank Councilmember Tovo for bringing it.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion. Councilmember Harper Madison.
Yes, and so I think while I appreciate that particular perspective, I also wanted to bring up, we had the opportunity recently to look into some work that's being done in New Orleans, really, really creative methods of addressing affordable housing, and there's a couple of projects that are using type 3 STRs to subsidize their affordable housing goals. And so I just don't want us to lose the opportunity to be a part of any project that's going to help us achieve our goals for creating more affordable housing. So if there are some creative approaches that use STRs, type 3 STRs, then I don't want us to not have that option. So that's my opposition to this particular amendment.
Councilmember Tovo moves an amendment. Discussion, yes. Councilmember Ellis.
I'm in agreement with some of the sentiments that I've been hearing. The reason that short-term rentals are so popular in Austin is because we have a lack of housing supply, and people are trying to offset the cost that it takes them to make sure they can pay their property taxes and the school district taxes and county taxes. And trying to create affordable housing but not allowing builders to use every tool in the toolbox, I think, is detrimental. So if we are allowing people to have percentages of affordable housing, I think we should allow them with those other units to even further offset and help people who need affordable housing by being allowed to charge like a market rate that works more for a short-term or hotel, daily rate, market rate. I think that helps with affordability. It doesn't hurt it.
Okay, everybody's had a chance to talk. Let's take a vote. Those in favor of Councilmember Tovo's amendment, please raise your hand. Alter, Tovo, Kitchen, and Pool. Those opposed? The balance of the dais does not pass 4-7. Further discussion? Any other amendments? Councilmember Tovo.
Yeah, I have one that I'll just lay out quickly. It is, I think I need to distribute it. You can go on to somebody else.
Okay.
I think I still need
Councilmember
to.
Alter.
So I'm going to do the direction I had before, and I'm working on getting my proposed language to address the issue from earlier down here so you can read it. But my direction kind of built on what Councilmember Tovo had, where she asked for staff to provide information when you're on. I wanted to add some requests for analysis to come with that data.
Okay.
So in work session, we discussed the importance of ensuring that we had reporting. The original resolution called for an annual report on the impact and outcomes of the program. I want to make sure that when the staff come back with the data on that annual basis, that they not only indicate the household types that this program created opportunities for, but to the greatest extent possible under the Fair Housing Act, that they also offer any recommendations to us on whether they think we need to make adjustments to better target particular household types or demographics. We have a lot of housing needs, and we may find rather quickly that we need to do some tweaks.
Okay, so I'm having trouble. Was there wording that you had?
The wording is really just to offer us any recommendations on whether they think we need to make adjustments to better target particular household types or demographics moving forward.
Would you repeat that, please?
To provide any recommendations to us on whether they think we need to make adjustments to better target particular household types or demographics to the extent possible under the Fair Housing Act.
Okay, does anybody have any objection with including that language?
And then,
Want to hear it again? I think people need to hear it again.
okay.
And is this a number 6 that's being added to Tobo's language?
Sure.
Just
We
trying-
don't always write down directions, so I apologize. To provide any
This one was just
recommendations
going
to
on a
us
little
on
bit.
to us on whether they think we need to make adjustments to better target particular household types or demographics to the greatest extent possible under the Fair Housing Act.
Okay, does anybody have any,
And-
hang on a second, let's do the pieces. Anybody have an objection to including that? Hearing none, that's included. Go ahead.
And then the second piece of analysis has to do with the types of developers that are coming back. I would like them to report whether this program is working best for existing nonprofit providers or for for-profit providers, or whether it brings new actors into the income-restricted housing market.
Okay, any objection to including that? I'm sorry?
Would you mind repeating that language, the last
I
one?
will try.
Thank you.
I would like them to tell us to whether this program is working best for existing nonprofit providers or for for-profit providers, or whether it brings new actors into the income-restricted housing market.
Any
So in
objection to
both
include?
cases,
hang on
I'm
a sec-
just
hang on a
asking
second,
for
hang on a second.
analysis.
While we have the words in front of us, any objection to those words being included? Hearing none, those words are included. Yes, Councilmember Ellis.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to offer another friendly amendment to this section that says development and parking exceptions utilized by each project, just so we can see exactly which portions of these bonuses are helping which developments and how parking is interplaying with all this as it plays out in real time.
This is another item to include in the report a year from now?
Yes.
Okay, say it again.
Development and parking exceptions utilized by each project.
Okay. Any objection to getting a report back on the development exceptions and development exceptions and parking exceptions utilized? Hearing none, that's included as well. Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, the
Okay.
one I just handed
Okay,
out.
Councilmember Tovo.
And this, we had an opportunity to talk about the other day, and where did I put it? And I had asked for some kind of model development to see what programs, how many units we could potentially be not getting by allowing the units to double count in two different density bonus programs. And so I don't know that we have an example of that from our staff, but I would just ask them if they have one.
Erica Leak, Neighborhood Housing Department. We did look into it, though because of the variability related to all of the existing programs, it's really difficult to come up with any firm numbers. So we considered the UNO density bonus program area where it seemed much more likely that they would develop using only the UNO density bonus program, because adding the requirements of this program to go along with that program would be a major disincentive and would not provide additional, significant enough additional benefits that anyone would do it unless they asked for significant subsidy, also because of the high land costs in that area. I mean, we did take a look at it, but I think getting to any definitive answer on that question would be very challenging.
So I think here's what I'll do. I would like to add to my amendment from earlier that asked for a report back, that question of, so what are we up to? Number 7? No, number 8?
8.
Identification of developments that participated in more than one density bonus program, and the number of units they would have created if they had met the requirements for both, for each one individually. I have to look back. If you're going to ask me to say that again, I'm going to have to look back at the closed caption.
Any objection to those words being included? Hearing none, they're included.
Let me add a 9, if I may, and that is the identification of any developments that include short-term rentals.
Okay. Does anybody have any objection to that?
Not an objection, but a clarifier. Any type of STR, type 1, type 2, type 3,
Thank you
or
for
all?
that clarification. Just type 3.
Thank you.
With the,
Type 2, they shouldn't have because they're not allowed to. Type 1, I think we're all in agreement on. So thank you for that clarification.
so language about also inventorying where there's a use of a type 3 STR in the property also included without objection. Ann, did you have something left?
One last
Okay.
question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just another clarifying point. I'm up to item number 10. So I'm just trying to figure out where did I fall off here? Are a couple of these intended to be the same numbered item?
Are you talking about the additional direction to staff?
I am.
Okay, number 6 was Councilmember Alters.
To provide direction on whether or not to make adjustments to better target household types.
And then Councilmember Alter had actually 2.
So that number 7, it says whether the
She had
program is
both
working
6 and
best.
7.
Right.
Councilmember Alter had 2, both 6 and 7. And then 8 was Ellis, and 9 and 10 were Tovos.
So we are up to 10.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kitchen. I think this might be our last amendment.
Well, I
Not
think
quite.
Councilmember
But
Alter
we'll
has
start.
something.
We'll start with you. Councilmember Kitchen.
Okay, so I just passed out a motion sheet. What this does is it just picks up language that we had passed in our original resolution that was, I'm sure it was unintended, but it wasn't carried forward. So this is, it says a qualifying development is not required to comply with the height and setback requirements except to maintain side setbacks. The language except to maintain side setbacks is in the original ordinance that we passed, and it was not carried forward. And so this is just to, I assume that was an oversight. This is just to carry that forward. It was in the first, it was in the second, be it further resolved in the original ordinance, number 1 and number 7.
Can you read those out just so?
Sure. So on page 7 of the original ordinance, and this is it says, the council intends for this program to, number 1, waive compatibility standards for height and setbacks, but maintain the side setbacks. So you see that language wasn't brought forward, so I'm just bringing that forward. And then further down, number 7 on that same page, it says waive the residential design and compatibility standards as codified in Chapter 25-2, Subchapter F, but maintain the side setbacks. And again, that wasn't carried forward. So all I'm doing here is carrying forward those from the original resolution. And then the third thing that wasn't carried forward is the what was on page 10 of the original resolution, the next to the last, be it further resolved, where it says, the amendments initiated by this resolution may not include increases in allowable impervious cover. So that wasn't carried forward. So what I did is I added a new H that says a qualifying development will comply with impervious cover as allowed by existing zoning.
Got it. Mayor?
Yes.
And I apologize, I just noticed this myself, so that's why I'm bringing them now.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to scramble to answer.
I understand, but it's very clearly in the original ordinance.
Yes. So my recollection is that in the original ordinance, we mean to maintain side setbacks by your zoning, but not side setbacks via Article 10. So I think you're adding additional setbacks via this amendment.
No, I don't think so, because the original ordinance says waive compatibility standards. And that's what Article 10 is, compatibility standards. So it's referring back to the same thing. Because it says waive compatibility standards for height and setbacks, but maintain the side setbacks. And what we've got here is, what we brought forward is, that we're not requiring compliance with Article 10 height and setback requirements, which are the compatibility standards.
So before we do that, can we knock out H, your bottom one? Because I think the intention was never to add. The only thing is, could we get rid of the word existing? Because I don't want, if we change zoning in the future, which I hear in some places we might be doing this year, I don't want it to be interpreted as existing zoning now. Can we just say a qualifying development will comply with impervious cover as allowed by zoning? Or base zoning, or just zoning?
Yeah, or you could just
That would make
repeat
sense to
the
me.
language that was in the resolution.
It would be the zoning, whatever it is. In other words, we're not going to give somebody a break
Right, that's
from what the
fine.
zoning. So I think you strike existing. Any objection to adding H with the word existing stricken? Hearing none, that's included. Okay? That gets us to setbacks.
And so I just think that there isn't a meeting of legal minds here where I think in the original resolution, my intent, always knowing we'd get to an ordinance phase, was to say we will still have side setbacks, but not the increased compatibility side setbacks. And your recollection or your intent at the time may have been the compatibility setbacks. And so we can just take a vote on that.
Actually, it's not my intent. I'm reading the language. The language says, it says, the council intends for this program to waive compatibility standards, and it uses the term compatibility standards. So are you suggesting that Article 10 compatibility standards is a different compatibility standards than it says in this original ordinance?
I mean that the intent of that sentence is we're going to waive those setbacks as it relates to compatibility, but still maintain side setbacks, which we are still maintaining, just not the compatibility side setbacks.
Okay?
Okay, now I don't understand the difference, so please tell me what you consider to be the difference.
Maybe we can have the staff come up and do
Or
that
maybe-
so it'll be more potentially impartial sounding.
Or maybe you would like to put except to maintain side setbacks in a different place, but it is in the original ordinance.
Donna Galati, Development Services Department. Compatibility setbacks from Article 10 do have a side setback, but I believe, Councilmember Kassar, you're speaking of setbacks in the base zoning development regulations. So, for example, in a basic SF3 zoning setback, basic SF3 lot, you have 5-foot side setbacks, and various commercial lots have various side setbacks. And so those base setbacks are found in 20190509council, and it's just development regulations. So we typically refer to those as base zoning development regulations. And that's how it's separate from the compatibility setback.
And where are those found? I'm sorry.
The base development regulations are found in 20190509council, and compatibility.
Okay, I'm sorry,
that's
go ahead.
in. I'm not sure which article that's.
No, that's
in.
okay.
Okay.
But is that subchapter F, or is that a
No,
different?
that's separate. It's kind of before all of those regulations. So it's just a base zoning regulation. If you didn't have any other subchapters or compatibility regulations, every base zone has kind of a set regulations. It's where we find our building coverage, impervious coverage, or FAR limit. And then other sections, such as subchapter F, establishes further restrictions in terms of the McMansion tent, if you will, and compatibility has further restrictions when you have commercial next to single family, that sort of thing.
Okay, well then I would suggest the language say the height and setback requirements of Article 10 compatibility standards except to maintain side setbacks as required by the base zoning district. And that pulls up the exact language from the original ordinance.
I don't think that reflects the same thing that I meant. One is compatibility setbacks, which are wider. One is setbacks by the zoning ordinance. I pick B. You're on the side of A. That's okay. We'll just vote and pick which one of the two.
But I need to establish this point because I am reading exactly from the original ordinance, and I'm willing to put the language exactly from the original ordinance. It says, waive compatibility standards for height and setbacks, but maintain the side setbacks as required by the base zoning district. So are you changing?
Yes, that's what we mean. That's exactly what we mean.
Okay, well then I can add that language to make that clear.
Okay.
Except to maintain side setbacks as required by the base zoning district.
I don't have the original resolution in front of
Okay.
me. What I'm trying to say is, would that change anything that is currently in the ordinance as she just read it? Then no, then let's just include it if it's exactly as it's in this ordinance. But what would this change in the ordinance?
I believe what Councilmember Kitchen is saying does reflect what was in the resolution.
And that's how
And how does it change what's in the ordinance before us now?
I don't think it does. I think it adds some clarity.
That's fine then.
Okay.
So what you're saying is a qualifying development has waived the compatibility standards for height and setbacks, but has maintained the side setbacks required by the base zoning district.
Yeah, I'm just reading the exact
Yeah, no, hold
language.
on. I'm just saying, is that your understanding of what's in the ordinance before us today?
Yes.
And so I would be happy including that language then.
Okay,
Waive
so-
compatibility standards for height and setbacks, but maintain the side setbacks as required by the base zoning district.
Okay, so that's number 1. What about number 3? Are you okay with number 3? Because that is exactly out of
Where is the resolution language on that?
number 7 on the same page, where it says, waive the residential design and compatibility standards as codified in Chapter 25-2, Subchapter F.
Except to
But-
maintain the side setbacks as required by the base zoning district.
No, number
That's
7 says, but maintain the side set.
And
Yeah,
then the
okay.
next words say as required by the base zoning district.
Right, mm-hmm,
So if you include those words, then yes.
okay. Okay, I've got that.
Okay, so I'm fine adding an amendment that says the same words from the resolution, except to maintain side setbacks as required by the base zoning district.
The mayor had to step away, so is there any objection? Are you accepting that as friendly to the base? Okay, and so do you want to address H, Councilmember Kitchen?
I think you got that.
I think we already did.
You already did, okay.
Yeah,
So-
we just took out the word existing.
Okay. Are there other amendments? Councilmember Alter?
Thank you. So I'm going to read what I passed out. It was hopefully addressing some of the concerns that we were talking about before when we were talking about the sleeping units. And I haven't had a chance to get staff's feedback on it. I'm totally open to changes here, but I think it addresses the spirit of what we were talking about. I placed it right below Councilmember Kitchen's Part 6 in that section of amend 25-1-725 post-construction requirements and penalty. If it belongs in a different section, I'm totally fine with that. So it's Part 7. The administrative rules implementing the Affordability Unlocked bonus program shall at a minimum establish 1, rent level standards based on the different MFI level targets and varying to reflect different unit types. And 2, determine income eligibility standards for renters and owners. So the administrative rules are, they're listed that there will be administrative rules earlier in the ordinance. And then this is basically saying that rent levels depend on the MFI and that there would be certain kind of maximum set by staff as we do now for UNO. And that the costs for any given MFI level would vary depending on unit type. So if you have a 2-bedroom and you're 60% MFI, the cost would be higher than if you were getting a sleeping unit that didn't have its own bathroom, and there would be variation there. And then the second part is establishing that there have to be rules that will ultimately need to be monitored for income eligibility for the renters or owners, whichever is applicable.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead, Councilmember Casar.
Just a nod from staff. Is this generally how we are planning on implementing this program? Okay, then I'm good with it.
There are no other objections. Then that is added. Are there any more amendments? No? Yes. I think the mayor's listening in the back as well. If you want to come back, Mayor, to vote.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
I just want to thank my colleagues and everyone in the community for having worked really hard on this. I think that it is really going to make our affordable housing dollars stretch much further. And I think the benefits will be seen by Austinites almost immediately. I anticipate or expect that the next time that people submit affordable housing proposals to us, that people will participate in this program, and we won't need to wait a year, that we'll immediately see how much more affordable housing we're willing to get. I know many of us have gone through lots of painful affordable housing zoning cases, and my hope is that by this change towards more inclusion, we will see way, way fewer of those and just help people that are trying to do the right thing by housing low-income people, by helping people stay in the city, that we will just get out of their way and help them do that good work. So thanks to my colleagues and to everybody in the community that worked on this.
I just want to thank Councilmember Cassar and your staff for all the work that you've done on this, and I'm excited to see the ordinance come back and the results of it.
And Mayor,
Okay.
also want to,
Councilmember Renteria.
Mayor Pro Tem, I also want to thank Greg. You know, this is going to save a lot of development in my district, time and money. In the past, I had to come and submit resolutions, resolutions putting properties in different zoning areas like the Todd District, what we did at Chalmers, so that we could reduce the parking requirement, because basically the people there are so low income, they don't have the type of vehicles. They're lucky to have one vehicle, but they don't. So we didn't need the parking requirements that they didn't need it. And there's a lot of empty parking spaces there, so I really want to thank you for bringing that.
All right, all those in favor of item 27 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Raise your hand. All those opposed? It's unanimous on the dais, and having no other business before us, we are adjourned. Please stick around for proclamations and music. We are adjourned at 5:40.